My name is Kunar Mukherjee, and for nearly a decade now, I have been doing research on MICPCH, a condition that is typically associated with mutation in the X-linked gene Cas. Now, everyone's life has watershed movement, and my research life has actually two watershed moments. The first one was a telephone call by analysts way back, I believe it was 2014 or 15. And talking to her, I remember the emotion in her voice, and I realized that our basic research may not be as fulfilling as we imagine it to be. While it could give us research papers, it might not be solving important questions. The second watershed moment came on this day of Tristian, when I got a telephone call from Dr. Tristian, who was the geneticist, clinical geneticist who was looking after Tristian. And I got this telephone call just at the beginning, I would say, of the lockdown that was due to COVID-19. And I felt paralyzed by two overwhelming sense of emotion. Dr. Christian told me that Tristian's parents have decided to donate his body for research. Even today, this is almost unheard of. So I was not quite prepared to hear it, and I did not know how to react. My unpreparedness was not because of lack of my training, but it's something that I had never done in my life in academic research. I did not know what to do. The second emotion was of an overwhelming sense of gratitude to somebody who is willing to make this gesture. I did not know, as I said, what to do, so we talked, and it was decided that a very able pathologist, Dr. Julia Higgett, will do an autopsy on Tristian. The results that we got from Dr. Higgett and discussions with her seemed to open our eyes to something that we were always observing in our laboratory experiments, but also overlooking it because our mind was trapped in the literature that preceded us. We always thought of MICPCH as a neurodevelopmental disorder. We read about it and we took it as such. But looking at the results that Dr. Higgett sent to me, it was clear that little Tristian's cerebellum had neurons that were dying out. It was not a problem of development of the cerebellum, but rather that the neurons were not surviving. This explained so many data that we had, and all published and unpublished, beginning in 2016, where we did see that without Cas, cerebellar formation and the brain formation was not affected. And we saw the defect only after birth, a few weeks after birth sometime. So we immediately got to ask more questions to ourselves. Can we then use this gene to produce a degenerative disorder in mice? If we could do that, then we will have a firm evidence that what we are looking at is really a degeneration and not development. We went about doing an experiment, and lo and behold, what we were seeing from the data that we got from Dr. Higgett was indeed true. What we were looking at was a degenerative condition. The degeneration, of course, as we predicted, begins before birth, and we had predicted it begins in the third trimester. A paper since then has been published from Israel, and they predict that actually the degeneration may even start a bit ahead of third trimester, actually from the second trimester. So at least what we were observing, what we learned from this study seems to get reproduced by other groups. Without this gesture from Tristian's parents, we would still be ignorant. We will still be following the old literature that what we were looking at was a neurodevelopmental condition. We would not have thought of it as a degenerative condition as we do now. The question is, does that make us hopeful? Or does that make us a little bit cynical? As most of you know, I am almost always very cynical. Why? Because I'm a scientist, I am a clinician, my job is to be skeptical. However, I would say now I am more hopeful than I was before. Even though the degeneration starts before birth, there is still a time after birth where we could actually do something to stop that degeneration, and that would help the kids going forward. What about the kids who already have had that degeneration and their cerebellum is small and their brain has got small? Do they have hope? I think yes. And the hope comes from neuroscience. The hope comes from neuroscience because we know that by stimulating different parts of brain directly in today's world using different methodologies, we could alter the functioning of the brain. And if we could do that in a typical brain, we should be able to do it in an atypical brain. So with that sense of promise, I send you this video, and I also remain indebted to this amazing gesture that was made, that changed our mind and that increased our knowledge in MICPCH. Thank you so much.